Most people would walk right past this penny without a second thought. But what if I told you that a single 1951 Lincoln penny, struck in Denver, could be hiding real collector value in plain sight, possibly sitting in an old jar, drawer, or forgotten coin roll right now? This is the story of the 1951 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks like an ordinary brown copper cent, but behind its simple design is a fascinating moment in American history, a massive coin shortage, and a surprising collector market that continues to grow year after year. The 1951 D. Lincoln penny was made during one of the busiest periods in U.S. mint history. America was rebuilding after World War II, the economy was booming, and everyday commerce depended heavily on small change. Pennies weren't just pocket money, they were essential tools of daily life. The Denver Mint, located in Colorado, was working at full speed to meet demand, producing hundreds of millions of coins for circulation. This penny features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. It was the first U.S. circulating coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure. On the back, you'll see the iconic wheat ears design, used from 1909 to 1958, symbolizing prosperity and agricultural strength in America. By 1951, this design had been around for over 4 decades, and Americans instantly recognized it. But what makes the Denver version special is its place in the post-war production surge. In 1951 alone, the Denver Mint struck over 625 million pennies. That's a massive number, but surprisingly, not all of them survived in good condition. These coins were made from 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, giving them their familiar warm reddish tone when new. Over time, exposure to air and moisture causes copper to darken, turning brown or chocolate-colored. Because of this, well-preserved red examples are much harder to find today and can sell for far more than worn coins. The design details on the 1951 D penny are simple but meaningful. Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head. To the left is the word "Liberty," and to the right is the year 1951. Beneath the date, you'll see a small letter D, the mint mark, showing it was struck in Denver. On the reverse, 2 wheat stalks frame the words 1 cent and United States of America, with the Latin motto E pluribus unum at the top. So why would anyone care about a penny that was made in the hundreds of millions? The answer lies in condition, rarity within quality levels, and the human stories behind survival. Most 1951 D pennies were heavily used in everyday transactions, in vending machines, grocery stores, phone booths, and cash registers. Over time, they were scratched, worn, bent, and damaged. Many were melted down for copper during price spikes decades later. Because of this, finding a 1951 D penny in truly high-grade condition is surprisingly difficult. Coins that still retain their original red mint color and sharp details can be scarce, especially in top professional grades. Collectors use grading systems to evaluate coins based on condition. A worn 1951 D penny might be worth only a few cents over face value, but one that looks nearly new, with full detail and original color, can be worth many times more. Even more exciting are error coins. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process, such as misaligned dies, doubled designs, or weak strikes. While the 1951 D penny is not famous for a single major error like some rare coins, collectors have discovered off-center strikes, die cracks, clipped planchets, and repunched mint marks in some examples. These unusual mistakes can turn an ordinary penny into a highly collectible piece. Some 1951 D pennies show what collectors call die cracks, where raised lines appear on the surface of the coin due to cracks in the metal dies used to strike it. Others display doubled lettering or numbers, which can make words or dates appear slightly shadowed or thickened. While subtle, these features can greatly increase value when verified. Now let's talk about real market values. A circulated 1951 D penny, One that's brown, worn, and shows clear signs of use typically sells for between 2 and 10 cents. That's not exciting on its own, but things change quickly when condition improves. A lightly worn example with good detail might sell for 25 to 50 cents. A coin in uncirculated condition, meaning it shows no wear from circulation, can range from a few dollars to over $15 depending on color and eye appeal. But the real jump happens with top-grade coins. In professional grading levels like MS66 or MS67, which represent nearly perfect preservation, prices can rise dramatically. High-grade red examples of the 1951 D penny have sold at auction for hundreds of dollars. Some top-certified pieces have crossed the $1,000 mark when demand is high and supply is low. Collectors are especially drawn to coins that appear just as they did the day they left the mint, bright, sharp, and untouched by circulation. These are extremely rare for coins that were produced for everyday use over 70 years ago. So how can you tell if you have a real 1951 D penny and whether it might be valuable? First, check the date. It must read 1951. Then look just below the date for a small letter D. That mint mark confirms it was struck in Denver. No mint mark would mean Philadelphia, and an S would mean San Francisco. Next, examine the color. If the coin is brown, it's likely been circulated. If it's reddish-brown, it's in better condition. If it's bright red and shiny with sharp detail, it could be uncirculated and worth much more. Look closely at Lincoln's face and coat. Are the lines sharp? Are the letters crisp? Is the wheat on the back well defined? Where usually shows first on the high points, such as Lincoln's cheekbone and jawline, and on the tops of the wheat stalks. To check for fakes, weigh the coin. A real 1951 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant weight differences could indicate a counterfeit or altered coin. Also test with a magnet. Genuine copper pennies are not magnetic. If it sticks, something is wrong. Be cautious of altered dates. Some counterfeiters change the date on common pennies to resemble rarer years. Under magnification, altered numbers often show tool marks, uneven surfaces, or unusual spacing. Now here's something most people don't know. During the early 1950s, Americans were hoarding coins. There was widespread concern about coin shortages, especially cents and nickels. Some people stored rolls of pennies in banks or jars, thinking metal shortages might make them valuable. Many of these hoards were eventually spent, but some survived. And today, unopened rolls from the early 1950s are highly sought after by collectors. Another fun fact is that the Lincoln Cent series is one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Lincoln has appeared on the penny continuously since 1909. The wheat design, however, ended in 1958 and was replaced by the Lincoln Memorial Reverse in 1959. That makes the 1951 D penny part of the final decade of the classic wheat cent era, a period many collectors consider the golden age of American small change. What makes this coin even more interesting is how accessible it still is. Unlike legendary rarities locked away in museums or millionaire collections, the 1951 D penny is still floating around in circulation finds, estate collections, and old family coin jars. That means anyone could stumble across one. Collectors love this coin because it represents honest, everyday America. It's the penny that bought newspapers, candy bars, bus rides, and groceries during one of the most optimistic decades in U.S. history. It's a coin that passed through countless hands during a time of economic growth, suburban expansion, and post-war confidence. It's also a favorite among beginners because it's affordable, historically meaningful, and widely available, yet still offers the thrill of discovery if you find one in exceptional condition or with a rare era. And for experienced collectors, high-grade examples of the 1951 D penny are surprisingly challenging to locate. The combination of heavy circulation, copper oxidation, and decades of handling means that pristine survivors are far scarcer than mintage numbers suggest. That's one of the great secrets of coin collecting. Rarity isn't just about how many were made, It's about how many survived in top condition. So what should you do if you find one? Start by handling it carefully. Hold it by the edges, not the face. Never clean it. Cleaning destroys original surfaces and can reduce value dramatically. If you believe it's in excellent condition or has a possible error, consider having it examined by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Even if it turns out to be a modest example, it still connects you to a powerful moment in American history, a time when the country was rebuilding, growing, and shaping the modern world. And sometimes, the greatest value of a coin isn't just in what it's worth, but in the story it carries. The 1951 D. Lincoln penny reminds us that even the smallest objects can hold big history. A single cent, quietly passed from hand to hand, survived wars, recessions, technological revolutions, and cultural change. And today, decades later, it still invites curiosity, discovery, and wonder. So the next time you hear loose change in your pocket, don't ignore it. Take a closer look, because one ordinary-looking penny could carry an extraordinary story and possibly more value than you ever expected. And who knows? That old coin jar in your drawer might be holding a small copper piece of American history, just waiting to be rediscovered. Most people would walk past this penny without a second thought. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But what if I told you that a small copper coin from 1956 could quietly hold a story of American history, Cold War tension, minting mysteries, and surprising collector value? Today, we're exploring the 1956 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of people have handled, yet very few truly understand. This penny was struck in 1956 at the Denver Mint, one of the busiest coin-producing facilities in the United States. The small letter D beneath the date tells us exactly where it was made. On the surface, it looks just like most Lincoln cents from the 1950s. Abraham Lincoln's portrait faces right on the front, while the back features two wheat stalks framing the words 1 cent, which is why collectors call it a wheat penny. But behind this simple design lies a fascinating story, not just about money, but about America itself during one of the most important decades of the 20th century. The year 1956 placed this penny right in the heart of post-World War II America. The country was booming. Families were moving into suburbs, televisions were entering living rooms, and the economy was growing fast. The Cold War was intensifying, and the United States was focused on industrial strength, national pride, and global influence. During this time, coins were more than just currency. They were symbols of stability and trust in the American financial system. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909, had already become one of the most recognizable coins in the world. By 1956, it had been in circulation for nearly 50 years, and Americans trusted it without question. The Denver Mint produced over 1.09 billion Lincoln cents in 1956, including this D-Mint Mark version. That's more than a billion coins, which might sound like a lot. But when you consider how many were lost, damaged, melted, or worn beyond recognition over decades of circulation, suddenly the number of surviving high-quality examples becomes much smaller. And that's where the story gets interesting. Let's take a closer look at what makes the 1956 D penny special. This coin is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. That gives it its warm reddish-brown color when new. Over time, exposure to air, moisture, and handling causes copper to darken, creating brown or chocolate tones. Collectors classify these coins by color: red, red-brown, or brown, with bright red examples being the most desirable and valuable. The front of the coin features a right-facing portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. This was the first circulating U.S. coin to feature a real person, introduced in 1909 to honor Lincoln's 100th birthday. Brenner's initials, VDB, are subtly placed on the bottom of the bust on later versions, though not always easy to see without magnification. On the reverse side, the coin displays two wheat ears, symbolizing prosperity and national growth. This wheat design was used from 1909 through 1958, making the 1956 penny part of the final years of the famous wheat cent era. Just 3 years later, in 1959, the Lincoln Memorial would replace the wheat stalks. But design alone doesn't explain why collectors still search through jars of old pennies hoping to find a 1956 D. What makes this coin especially intriguing is its connection to minting quality, condition rarity, and occasional errors. The kinds of surprises that can turn a simple penny into something much more valuable. Most 1956 D pennies were heavily circulated. They were used in everyday transactions, buying newspapers, candy bars, postage stamps, and parking meters. Because of that, most surviving examples today are worn, darkened, or scratched. These coins typically sell for just a few cents above face value, but when you find one in unusually sharp condition, especially with bright original red color, the value can increase dramatically. High-grade examples certified by professional grading services have sold for hundreds and even thousands of dollars. A pristine 1956 D Lincoln cent graded MS67 red has sold at auction for over $2,000. And even slightly lower grades can still command impressive premiums. The reason is simple. While over a billion were minted, very few were saved in perfect condition at the time. In the 1950s, people rarely thought of pennies as collectibles. They spent them, dropped them, and stored them loosely in drawers. Mint state survivors are rare because almost none were preserved intentionally. But condition isn't the only factor. Some 1956 D pennies feature fascinating mint errors, mistakes made during the striking process that slipped into circulation before anyone noticed. These errors can include double die varieties, off-center strikes, clipped planchets, or die cracks. One of the most sought-after varieties is the double die obverse, where parts of Lincoln's face or the lettering appear doubled due to misalignment during the minting process. These coins are rare, and depending on strength and condition, they can sell for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. Other error types include repunched mint marks, where the D was stamped more than once, creating a shadow-like effect. These are subtle, but collectors love them because they tell the story of human involvement in the minting process, tiny imperfections in a system designed for precision. Now let's talk about real-world value. In average circulated condition, a 1956 D penny is usually worth between 2 and 10 cents. That's not life-changing money, but in uncirculated condition, values climb quickly. A bright red example graded MS65 can sell for $20 to $40. At MS66, prices can jump to $75 to $150. And in top-tier grades, like MS67 red, prices can reach into the thousands. Error coins bring even more excitement. Some strong double die examples have sold for $500 to $3,000, depending on clarity and condition. Off-center strikes can range from $50 to several $100s, depending on how dramatic the error is and whether the date remains visible. These numbers show something important. This isn't about the year alone. It's about condition, rarity within rarity, and the story behind the coin. So how do you know if you've found a real 1956 D penny and not a damaged or altered one? First, check the date. It should clearly read 1956. Then look beneath the date for a small letter D, that's the Denver Mint mark. No letter means it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, weigh the coin if possible. A genuine 1956 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant differences could indicate damage, wear, or alteration. Examine the surface carefully. Look for unnatural shine, tool marks, or signs of replating. Some people attempt to artificially brighten old pennies or modify dates, but these alterations usually leave visible traces under magnification. For error varieties, use a magnifying glass or coin loop to inspect the lettering, especially in Liberty, In God We Trust, and the date itself. True doubling will look raised and rounded, not flat or blurry. If you believe you've found something unusual or valuable, the safest move is to have the coin examined by a professional coin dealer or submitted to a third-party grading service. Now here's where things get really interesting. Despite being a common-date coin, the 1956 D penny has developed a loyal following among collectors, not because it's rare in quantity, but because it represents the final stretch of the classic wheat cent design. It sits just 3 years before the wheat reverse disappeared forever, replaced by the Lincoln Memorial in 1959. To many collectors, this makes the 1956 D penny a symbol of the closing chapter of an era, a piece of Americana that connects modern coinage with early 20th century tradition. There's also something deeply nostalgic about this coin. Many Americans alive today remember finding wheat pennies in circulation during their childhood. The sound, the weight, the color, all of it feels different from today's zinc-based cents. The 1956 penny, with its solid copper composition, feels like a relic from a more durable time. Here's a fun fact most people don't know. The copper in your 1956 D penny is worth more than 1 cent today, based purely on metal value. That's why melting copper pennies is illegal. The government wants to preserve the coinage supply, but it also means that even worn-out examples hold intrinsic value beyond face value, something modern pennies no longer offer. Another surprising detail is that some collectors believe the Denver mint strikes of the mid-1950s tend to show stronger details than Philadelphia coins of the same era. While this isn't universally true, many high-grade 1956 D examples display crisp wheat lines and sharp Lincoln features, making them especially attractive to collectors focused on visual quality. There's also a quiet thrill in the hunt. Because these coins were minted in such large numbers, they still occasionally appear in circulation, coin rolls, old jars, and inherited collections. Unlike ultra-rare coins locked away in museums or vaults, the 1956 D penny remains accessible. Anyone could find one, which adds to its charm. And every time someone checks a handful of old cents, there's always the chance they'll uncover a rare variety, a high-grade survivor, or an overlooked treasure hiding in plain sight. Collectors love this coin because it's affordable to start with, rich in history, and filled with possibility. It's the kind of coin that teaches beginners how to grade, how to spot errors, and how to appreciate subtle differences in condition, while still offering real upside potential. It's also a reminder that value isn't always about age alone. Some coins from the 1800s are worth less than pristine coins from the 1950s. What matters most is rarity within condition, originality, and collector demand. And the 1956 D penny checks all those boxes. It carries the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. It reflects post-war American optimism. It marks the final years of the iconic wheat design, and in the right condition, it can surprise even experienced collectors. So the next time you see a brown old penny in a drawer or jar, don't ignore it. Flip it over. Look at the date. Check for that tiny D. You might be holding a quiet piece of American history and possibly something far more valuable than it seems. Because sometimes the smallest coins carry the biggest stories. And sometimes the treasure you're searching for has been sitting in your pocket all along. Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket that quietly holds a story from America's past and might be worth far more than 1 cent. Most people pass right over it without a second thought. But one ordinary-looking coin from the 1950s has become a favorite among collectors. Today, we're uncovering the hidden story of the 1957 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a small coin with a surprisingly big legacy. The 1957 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint during a time when America was booming with confidence, innovation, and post-war growth. The words "no mint mark" simply mean it was made in Philadelphia, the main U.S. mint at the time, which did not place mint marks on pennies until later decades. While millions of these coins were struck, not all 1957 pennies are equal. Some are far more desirable than others, and a few have become surprisingly valuable. To understand this coin, we need to step back into the year 1957. The United States was in the middle of a powerful era of change. The space race was beginning. Television was becoming a household staple. Highways were expanding. Families were moving into suburbs, and the American economy was growing rapidly. In this environment, everyday objects like coins were mass-produced to support the growing demand for commerce. The Lincoln cent, first introduced in 1909, had already been in circulation for nearly 50 years by the time the 1957 version was struck. In 1957, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 1.05 billion Lincoln pennies, an enormous number even by today's standards. These coins were made primarily to meet the needs of daily transactions. Grocery stores, gas stations, diners, and newspapers all relied on coins like these to keep business moving. At the time, no one imagined that decades later, collectors would carefully examine these pennies under magnification, searching for small details that could turn a 1-cent coin into something far more valuable. The design of the 1957 penny is part of what makes it so recognizable. On the front, or obverse, is the familiar portrait of President Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. This was the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical figure instead of a symbolic image like Liberty. Lincoln faces to the right, with the word Liberty to the left and the year 1957 to the right. Above his head are the words "In God We Trust." On the reverse side, you'll see the famous wheat ears design, often called the wheat penny. 2 wheat stalks curve upward along the edges, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with EPLURBUSUNUM at the top. This wheat design was used from 1909 until 1958, making the 1957 penny one of the final issues before the Lincoln Memorial design replaced it in 1959. That alone gives the 1957 penny special historical significance. It belongs to the closing chapter of the wheat penny era. In terms of metal, the 1957 penny is made mostly of copper. Specifically, it contains 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin. This gives the coin its warm reddish-brown color when freshly minted. Over time, exposure to air and handling causes copper to darken, which is why many older pennies appear brown or dull today. Coins that still retain their bright red color are especially desirable to collectors because they suggest the coin has seen very little circulation. Now, you might be wondering, if over 1 billion of these coins were made, how could any of them be valuable? The answer lies in condition, rarity of errors, and collector demand. While most 1957 pennies are worth only a few cents today, certain examples can sell for surprisingly high amounts. The difference between a common coin and a valuable one often comes down to how well it was preserved or whether it contains a minting mistake. Let's talk about condition first. Coin collectors use a grading scale to evaluate how worn or preserved a coin is. A heavily circulated 1957 penny with scratches, dull surfaces, and flattened details might only be worth 2 or 3 cents. But a well-preserved coin with sharp details, smooth surfaces, and original mint luster can be worth much more. In top condition, especially those graded by professional services as mint state 65 or higher, 1957 pennies have sold for hundreds or even thousands of dollars. One of the most exciting parts of coin collecting is searching for errors, mistakes made during the minting process that create unusual and rare variations. The 1957 penny is known for several types of errors that collectors actively seek. One of the most famous is the double die obverse. This occurs when the coin's design is impressed onto the die more than once in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect on letters and numbers. On a genuine double die 1957 penny, you might see noticeable doubling on the word Liberty, the date, or the phrase, "In God We Trust." These coins are rare and can be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars, depending on strength and condition. Another collectible error is the repunched mint mark, Although technically, Philadelphia pennies do not carry mint marks, some era types still appear in other areas of the design. There are also off-center strikes, where the coin design is shifted, leaving part of the blank planchet visible. These coins are visually striking and often command strong premiums. Even small errors like die cracks or clipped planchets can increase a coin's value beyond face value. To give you a sense of real-world prices, let's look at actual auction results. A 1957 Lincoln penny, graded MS67, red by a major grading service, has sold for over $2,000 at auction. These coins are extremely rare in that level of preservation, with only a small number known to exist in such high grade. Strong double die varieties have sold in the hundreds or thousands, depending on visibility and condition. Even regular, non-era 1957 pennies in excellent red condition commonly sell for $20 to $50 or more. What makes these prices especially fascinating is that many of these coins were once ordinary pocket change. Someone might have received one as change at a grocery store in the 1950s and tucked it away in a jar, not realizing that decades later, it could become a valuable collectible. That sense of hidden treasure is a big part of what draws people into coin collecting. So how can you tell if your 1957 penny is real and possibly valuable? First, check the date and mint mark area carefully. A genuine 1957 penny will show the year clearly and have no mint mark below the date, indicating it was struck in Philadelphia. Look closely at the design details. Lincoln's hair, cheekbone, and jawline should appear natural and well-formed. The wheat stalks on the reverse should show clear lines and texture. Next, examine the coin for unusual doubling, especially on the lettering and numbers. Use a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe if you have one. True doubled dies will show rounded, raised doubling, not flat or shadow-like effects. Also, weigh the coin if possible. A standard 1957 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant deviations could suggest damage, wear, or a possible counterfeit, although fake pennies from this era are relatively rare compared to more valuable gold or silver coins. It's also important to avoid cleaning your coin. Cleaning can damage the surface and dramatically reduce its value. Even a coin that looks dirty or dark might be far more valuable in its natural state than after polishing. If you believe you've found a rare or high-grade example, consider having it professionally graded by a reputable coin grading service. This not only authenticates the coin, but also helps establish its market value. There are also some fascinating fun facts about the 1957 penny that many people don't know. For example, it was one of the last pennies produced entirely with the classic wheat reverse before the Lincoln Memorial design replaced it in 1959. That makes it part of a historic transition in American coinage. Another interesting detail is that the copper in these coins is now worth more than the coin's face value, although melting pennies for metal is illegal in the United States. Still, it highlights how the materials themselves have become more valuable over time. The year 1957 is also significant in American history. It was the year the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the world's first artificial satellite, which sparked the space race. It was also a time of rapid technological change and cultural shifts. Coins like the 1957 penny quietly circulated through these historic moments, passing through countless hands while witnessing a nation evolve. Collectors love the 1957 penny not because it is rare in general, but because it represents a perfect combination of accessibility, history, and hidden potential. It's easy to find, affordable for beginners, yet still offers the excitement of discovery. Anyone can search through old jars, rolls of coins, or inherited collections and realistically hope to find a high-grade example or an interesting era. That sense of possibility is powerful. It turns ordinary change into a treasure hunt. Another reason collectors are drawn to this coin is its connection to Abraham Lincoln himself. Lincoln remains one of the most admired presidents in American history, symbolizing unity, leadership, and perseverance. Having his image on a coin from the mid-20th century creates a bridge between different eras of American life. For many collectors, these coins are more than metal, they're tangible pieces of history. There's also something deeply satisfying about holding a coin that's more than 65 years old and realizing it's still recognizable, still meaningful, and still capable of surprising people. The 1957 penny reminds us that not all treasures are hidden in vaults or museums. Some are sitting quietly in desk drawers, old piggy banks, or inherited collections, waiting for someone to look a little closer. If you're searching for one today, the best places to look are old coin jars, rolls from banks, estate collections, and inherited change. While most examples you find will be common, the thrill lies in the possibility that one might stand out. A bright red surface, crisp details, or unusual lettering could signal something special. And even if it turns out to be a standard coin, you've still uncovered a small piece of American history. The 1957 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny may seem ordinary at first glance, but its story proves otherwise. It carries the legacy of a changing nation, the artistry of classic American coin design, and the excitement of hidden value. It reminds us that history isn't always found in textbooks or museums. Sometimes it's right there in your pocket, disguised as spare change. So the next time you come across an old penny, especially one dated 1957, don't dismiss it too quickly. Turn it over, look closely. You might just be holding a piece of the past, or maybe even a small treasure that's been waiting decades to be discovered. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you that a small copper coin from 1961, with a tiny letter beneath Lincoln's date, could be hiding a story of American history, rare minting errors, and collector value that surprises even experienced coin hunters? Today, we're uncovering the true story of the 1961 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first, yet holds secrets that make it far more interesting than most people realize. The 1961 D. Lincoln penny was struck in Denver, one of the United States Mint's major production facilities. The small D beneath the date tells us exactly where it was made. This coin belongs to the long-running Lincoln Cent series, first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. By 1961, the Lincoln penny had already been in circulation for over 50 years, and it had become one of the most familiar objects in American daily life. But while millions of these coins passed through people's hands in grocery stores, gas stations, and payphones, very few people stopped to consider what was really behind that simple copper surface. Each penny carries not just monetary value, but a snapshot of American history, industrial progress, and everyday life during the early 1960s. The year 1961 was a fascinating moment in the United States. John F. Kennedy had just taken office as president. The Cold War was shaping global politics. The space race was accelerating. And American manufacturing was operating at full speed, including the production of everyday money. Pennies were still made primarily from copper, giving them that warm reddish color that collectors now associate with classic Lincoln cents. At the Denver Mint alone, over 1.7 billion pennies were struck in 1961. That number is massive. It means these coins were everywhere, filling pockets, purses, and cash drawers across the country. And because of that huge production, most people assume this coin must be common and nearly worthless. But coin collecting often isn't about how many coins were made. It's about condition, errors, rarity within the population, and the stories behind specific examples. That's where the 1961 D penny becomes much more interesting. Let's take a closer look at the design. On the front, or obverse, the coin features Abraham Lincoln facing right. This portrait was designed by Victor David Brenner and has been used since 1909, making it one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. Above Lincoln's head, you'll see the words "In God We Trust." To the left is the word "Liberty," and to the right is the date 1961 with a small D just beneath it, indicating the Denver Mint. On the back, or reverse, the coin shows two wheat stalks curving along the edges, framing the words 1 cent and United States of America, with E pluribus unum across the top. This design, known as the wheat reverse, was used from 1909 through 1958, but the 1961 penny does not have wheat ears, and this is where many people get confused. In 1959, the Mint changed the reverse design to commemorate the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. The wheat stalks were replaced with the Lincoln Memorial, making 1961 part of the Lincoln Memorial cent era. So if you see a 1961 penny with wheat stalks, something is very wrong and potentially extremely valuable. Now let's talk about what the 1961 D penny is made of. This coin is composed of 95% copper and 5% zinc and tin, giving it a solid copper core. It weighs 3.11 grams and measures 19 millimeters in diameter. These copper pennies feel heavier and sound different when dropped compared to modern zinc-based cents, which were introduced in 1982. Collectors especially love Pennies 1,982 pennies because of their copper content. While the metal value alone doesn't make these coins expensive, it adds to their appeal and helps preserve them better over time. Copper ages gracefully, developing beautiful tones and surfaces that collectors prize. Now here's where things get interesting. While most 1961 D pennies are common in circulated condition, certain examples can be surprisingly valuable, especially those in high-grade condition or with rare minting errors. Let's start with condition. A circulated 1961 D penny, the kind you might find in an old jar or drawer, is usually worth only a few cents. But when you get into uncirculated condition, especially coins that still have their original mint luster and sharp details, the value begins to rise. And at the highest grading levels, the prices can become shocking. Some 1961 D pennies graded in top condition by professional grading services have sold for hundreds, and in rare cases, thousands of dollars. These are coins that survived decades without wear, scratches, stains, or damage, something extremely rare for a coin that was meant to be used in everyday commerce. But condition alone isn't the only reason collectors search for this coin. Mint errors make the 1961 D penny especially exciting. One of the most famous and valuable error types involves doubled dies. A doubled die occurs when the coin die receives a misaligned impression during manufacturing, causing certain parts of the design to appear doubled. This doubling is usually most noticeable in the date, lettering, or Lincoln's profile. Some 1961 pennies, including Denver-minted examples, have shown strong doubled die features, particularly in the words "In God We Trust" or in the date. These coins are dramatically more valuable than standard examples, often selling for hundreds or thousands of dollars, depending on clarity and condition. Another important error type is repunched mint marks. In earlier years, mint marks were punched into coin dies by hand. Sometimes, the punch was misaligned and corrected, leaving a visible double or shifted mint mark. A 1961 D penny with a repunched D mint mark is far scarcer than normal examples and can command premium prices from collectors. There are also off-center strikes, clipped planchets, broad strikes, and die cracks, all types of minting errors that can turn an ordinary penny into a highly desirable collectible. Some off-center 1961 D pennies have sold for several $100s, especially when the date and mint mark remain fully visible. Now let's talk real market value. Most circulated 1961 D pennies sell for 1 to 5 cents. Uncirculated examples can range from 25 cents to several dollars depending on quality. But professionally graded coins in top condition have sold for much more. Some pristine specimens graded MS67 or higher have sold for over $1,000 at auction, especially when eye appeal and original color are strong. Error coins push those values even higher. Certain doubled die 1961 cents have sold for several $1,000s. Off-metal errors, such as a 1961 penny struck on the wrong planchet, are extremely rare and can sell for tens of thousands of dollars, though these are exceptional cases. Now, how can you tell if your 1961 penny is real and potentially valuable? First, check the date and mint mark. Under the 1961, you should see a small D. If it's missing, the coin was struck in Philadelphia, not Denver. That doesn't make it fake, but it does make it a different variety. Next, look at the reverse. It should show the Lincoln Memorial Building, not wheat stalks. If you see wheat ears on a coin dated 1961, that would be a major error and almost certainly extremely valuable, but also something that would require professional verification. Weigh the coin if possible. A genuine 1961 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Significant deviations could indicate damage, alteration, or an unusual mint error. Then examine the lettering and numbers closely. Use a magnifying glass and look for doubling, especially on "In God We Trust," Liberty, and the date. True doubled dies look thick, bold, and separated, not blurry or shadowy like machine doubling. Also check the mint mark. A repunched D may appear doubled or slightly shifted, which is a strong indicator of a valuable variety. Finally, look at the surface. Genuine coins should show natural wear patterns and copper aging. Artificial toning, unusual textures, or casting bubbles could indicate a fake or altered coin. Now let's explore some fascinating facts about the 1961 penny. This coin was minted during the height of American industrial confidence. The Denver Mint alone produced more pennies in 1961 than many countries' minted coins of all denominations combined. That makes this penny a symbol of mass production, yet within that massive output, rare errors slipped through, creating today's collectibles. Another interesting fact is that 1961 pennies were still made from nearly pure copper, just 2 decades before the U.S. Mint switched to cheaper zinc-based cores due to rising copper prices. This makes them part of the final generation of traditional copper cents. Also, many 1961 pennies were saved by collectors and hobbyists because people began noticing changes in coin designs and materials during the 1960s. This means uncirculated rolls and bankrupt examples still surface today, sometimes hiding rare varieties inside. One surprising detail is how many valuable coins remain undiscovered. Because pennies are so small and commonly ignored, countless collections sit in jars, drawers, or inherited boxes without being examined closely. Many people unknowingly spend coins worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars simply because they didn't know what to look for. This is one reason collectors love the 1961 penny. It represents possibility. It's not a legendary rarity like the 1909 VDB or the 1955 double die, but it's close enough to modern times that millions of people might still own one. That combination of accessibility and potential value makes it especially exciting for beginner and experienced collectors alike. Collectors also appreciate the 1961 penny for its clean design, strong strikes, and beautiful copper surfaces. High-grade examples often display rich red color, sharp details in Lincoln's hair and coat, and crisp lines in the Lincoln Memorial features that give the coin stunning visual appeal. And for era collectors, this date offers multiple varieties, including doubled dies, repunched mint marks, and striking anomalies that make each discovery feel like a treasure hunt. There's also something deeply emotional about coins like this. This penny passed through countless hands during a time of cultural change, during the rise of television, space exploration, and a new generation of American optimism. Someone may have used this very coin to buy candy at a corner store, feed a parking meter, or save towards something meaningful. Every scratch and surface mark carries a story. That's what makes coin collecting more than just a hobby. It's a way of touching history. So if you have a jar of old pennies, especially ones dated before 1982, the 1961 penny deserves a closer look. You might be holding a common coin, or you might be holding a rare era, a high-grade survivor, or a piece of American minting history that collectors would love to own. And even if your coin turns out to be worth just a few cents, the knowledge you gain from examining it, the details, the craftsmanship, the story, adds value of its own. Because sometimes, the most fascinating treasures aren't hidden in vaults or museums. They're sitting quietly in a jar, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. And that little D, beneath the date on a 1961 penny, might just be the beginning of a story you never expected. Most people walk past pennies every day without a second thought. But what if I told you that one ordinary-looking coin from 1979 could be sitting in a drawer, jar, or pocket right now, quietly hiding a value far beyond 1 cent? Today, we're uncovering the story of the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have owned, yet very few have truly looked at closely. While most examples are common, some rare versions and errors have sold for surprising amounts, turning pocket change into real money. And the most interesting part, many people still don't realize what they have. Let's take a journey into the history, design, and hidden value of this overlooked American coin, and by the end, you'll know exactly what to look for. The Lincoln penny has been part of American life since 1909, created to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. It became the first U.S. circulating coin to feature a real person instead of a symbolic figure. By 1979, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for 70 years, and it was one of the most widely used coins in the country. In 1979, the United States Mint was producing massive quantities of pennies to meet everyday demand. That year, cents were struck at 3 locations: Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco. Coins from Denver carry a D mint mark. San Francisco coins were mainly proof coins made for collectors, but pennies struck in Philadelphia carried no mint mark at all, and those are what we call the 1979 no mint mark Lincoln pennies. These Philadelphia pennies were meant for daily use: grocery stores, gas stations, payphones, and vending machines. Nobody imagined they would ever be collectible. They were just everyday money. But history has a way of turning ordinary objects into something special, especially when errors, rare varieties, and top-condition examples enter the picture. The 1979 Lincoln penny features the familiar Lincoln portrait on the front, originally designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1979 to the right. On the back, the design shows the Lincoln Memorial, which had been used on pennies since 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside, one of the smallest engraved figures ever placed on a U.S. coin. In 1979, pennies were no longer made of solid copper. Rising copper prices in the early 1970s made it too expensive to produce pennies that way, so the mint switched to a zinc core coated with thin copper plating. These coins are about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. That change makes them lighter than older pennies and more prone to damage over time, which plays an important role in their collectible value today. At first glance, a 1979 no-mint mark penny doesn't look special. Most are worth exactly 1 cent, but collectors know that value often comes from small differences and sometimes from mistakes that slipped past the mint's quality control. One of the most interesting features of 1979 pennies is the possibility of errors and varieties. During the minting process, dies can wear down, become misaligned, or pick up damage. When that happens, coins may show doubling in the letters or numbers, missing details, off-center strikes, or other unusual characteristics. One variety collectors watch closely for is doubled die errors. This happens when a coin die receives more than one misaligned impression during its creation, causing letters or numbers to appear doubled. On Lincoln pennies, this doubling is most often seen in the date, the word "Liberty," or the motto, "In God We Trust." While strong double die examples from 1979 are rare, verified specimens do exist, and they can command strong prices from collectors. Another type of error involves off-center strikes. These happen when the blank coin planchet isn't properly seated in the press, causing part of the design to be missing and leaving a blank area on the coin. Depending on how dramatic the off-center strike is and whether the full date remains visible, these coins can sell for anywhere from $20 to several $100s. There are also clipped planchets, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a metal cutting error, and broad strikes, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar, causing it to spread out and appear wider than normal. While these errors aren't exclusive to 1979, collectors actively seek them from this year because so many pennies were made, increasing the odds that errors slipped through. But perhaps the most important factor in determining the value of a 1979 no-mint mark penny isn't an error at all, it's condition. Most 1979 pennies spent years circulating through cash registers, pockets, jars, and coin counters. They picked up scratches, discoloration, stains, and wear. Zinc-core pennies are especially vulnerable to corrosion once the copper plating is damaged, which drastically lowers their collectible value. However, coins that survived in pristine condition, never circulated, never spent, are called mint-state coins. These coins still retain their original luster and sharp details. Collectors pay premiums for high-grade examples, especially those certified by professional grading services. In top condition, even common coins can become surprisingly valuable. For example, a standard 1979 no-mint mark penny in worn condition is worth 1 cent. In lightly circulated condition, maybe 2 or 3 cents, but in uncirculated condition, values start rising. A typical mint state example might sell for $1 to $5. Higher grade coins, especially those graded MS66 or MS67 by professional services, can sell for $20, $50, or more. And in rare cases, truly exceptional specimens have sold for hundreds of dollars. There are auction records of 1979 no-mint mark pennies graded MS67 red selling for over $200. These coins are nearly perfect, with full original copper-red color, razor-sharp details, and virtually no visible marks, even under magnification. Finding one in circulation today would be extreme. Have you ever looked at a penny and wondered if it might secretly be worth far more than 1 cent? What if I told you that a simple 1994 Lincoln penny with no mint mark could be hiding unexpected value in plain sight, right now, in someone's pocket, jar, or old drawer? Today, we're uncovering the story behind the 1994 no mint mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks ordinary. Millions of Americans have handled this coin without giving it a second thought. But for collectors, this penny represents an interesting moment in U.S. coin history, and in certain conditions, it can be surprisingly valuable. Let's explore what makes this coin special, what to look for, and why people are still searching for it today. The Lincoln penny has been part of American life since 1909, created to honor President Abraham Lincoln's 100th birthday. It was the first U.S. circulating coin to feature a real person. By 1994, the Lincoln cent had already been in circulation for 85 years and had become one of the most familiar coins in the world. Nearly every American had handled one, saved one, or spent one without thinking twice. The 1994 penny was minted during a time of economic stability and modern manufacturing, but also during a period when coin production numbers were extremely high. The U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies each year to meet public demand. That means the 1994 Lincoln cent isn't rare in the traditional sense. However, not all 1994 pennies are created equal, and some stand out far more than others. When people say 1994 no mint mark penny, they are referring specifically to coins made at the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike the Denver or San Francisco mints, Philadelphia traditionally did not use a mint mark on pennies for most years. So if your 1994 penny has no letter under the date, it was struck in Philadelphia. In 1994, the Philadelphia Mint produced more than 6.5 billion Lincoln cents. That's billion with a B. It sounds like that should make the coin completely worthless beyond face value, and for most examples, that's true. But value in coin collecting isn't only about how many were made. It's also about condition, errors, and unusual features that escaped quality control. Let's take a closer look at the design of the 1994 Lincoln penny. On the front, or obverse, you see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, liberty to the left, and the year 1994 to the right. Beneath the date, if there's no letter, you know it was made in Philadelphia. On the back, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, which had been used on pennies since 1959. Above the building are the words United States of America and E pluribus unum, while 1 cent appears at the bottom. If you look closely inside the memorial, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated between the columns, making this one of the few U.S. coins that shows the same person on both sides. Now let's talk about what this coin is made of. By 1994, the Lincoln penny was no longer made of solid copper. Since 1982, pennies had been struck from a zinc core coated with a thin layer of copper. That makes the coin lighter than older pennies, weighing about 2.5 grams instead of the 3.11 grams of earlier copper cents. While this change reduced production costs, it also created new opportunities for striking errors, which is where collectors start paying close attention. So what makes the 1994 no mint mark penny interesting or valuable? In most circulated condition, it's worth exactly 1 cent. Even in lightly worn condition, it usually doesn't sell for more than a few cents. But in uncirculated condition, especially with strong luster and no visible marks, values begin to rise. A typical uncirculated 1994 Philadelphia penny might sell for 25 cents to $1. But high-grade examples, especially those graded MS67 or higher by professional grading services, can sell for much more. Some pristine examples have sold for $20, $40, or even higher depending on demand and eye appeal. But the real excitement comes from error coins. Error pennies are coins that were struck incorrectly during the minting process. These mistakes are rare compared to normal coins and can make even common dates extremely valuable. One known error for the 1994 penny is the double die obverse. This happens when the coin die receives a misaligned second impression during the manufacturing process, causing parts of the design to appear doubled. On a double die 1994 penny, you might see doubling on the date, the word liberty, or in God we trust. These errors can range from subtle to dramatic, and the stronger the doubling, the more valuable the coin. Another possible error is an off-center strike, where the design is not properly centered on the coin blank. This can cause part of the coin's design to be missing, creating a visually striking error that collectors love. Depending on how off-center the strike is, values can range from $10 to over $100. There are also broad strikes, where the coin is struck outside the retaining collar, causing it to spread wider than normal. These coins look flatter and wider than standard pennies and are immediately noticeable. A 1994 broad strike penny in nice condition can sell for $15 to $75 or more. One of the most interesting and rare errors involves wrong planchets. In rare cases, a penny might be struck on a blank intended for another denomination or metal type. A 1994 penny struck on a dime planchet, for example, would be smaller, thinner, and silver-colored, and could be worth several $100s. These errors are extremely rare, but they do exist, and collectors actively hunt for them. There have also been reports of missing copper plating errors. Because 1994 pennies are zinc core with copper coating, sometimes the copper layer fails to fully bond to the surface. This leaves the coin looking silvery gray instead of copper-colored. These unplated or partially plated pennies are collectible and can sell for $10 to $100 or more, depending on appearance and condition. Now let's look at some real collector value examples. A standard 1994 no mint mark penny in circulated condition is worth 1 cent, but an uncirculated example graded MS65 might sell for $1 to $3. Higher grades like MS67 can sell for $15 to $40, and occasionally more if demand is strong. A genuine double-die 1994 penny can sell for $50, $100, or more depending on the strength of the doubling and overall condition. Some strong examples have reached several $100s at auction. Off-center strikes and broad strikes typically sell in the $20 to $100 range, while wrong planchet errors can exceed $300 or even $500 in some cases. These prices may not sound life-changing, but remember, these coins were originally worth 1 cent. Turning pocket change into even $50 or $100 is exciting for collectors, and that possibility keeps people searching through rolls of pennies and old jars every day. So how can you tell if your 1994 no mint mark penny is real and possibly valuable? First, check the date and look beneath it. If there's no letter, it was minted in Philadelphia, which is what you're looking for. Next, examine the coin closely under good lighting or with a magnifying glass. Look for doubling in the letters, especially in Liberty, the date, and in God We Trust. True doubled dies show clear separation between letters, not just blurry shadows. Also check the edges and center alignment of the design. If the coin looks off-center, unusually wide, or oddly shaped, it could be an error. Check the color of the coin. If it appears silvery instead of copper-colored, it might be missing its copper plating. Weighing the coin can also help. A standard 1994 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, it may have been struck on the wrong planchet. As for fakes, most counterfeit pennies are modern novelty pieces or altered coins. Be cautious of coins that appear artificially damaged or modified. Real mint errors happen during striking, not after the coin leaves the mint. If you suspect you've found something valuable, consider having it examined by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. Now let's talk about some fun and surprising facts about the 1994 Lincoln penny. Even though billions were made, most people alive today have probably held one without realizing it. These coins passed through vending machines, gas stations, grocery stores, school cafeterias, and countless cash registers across America. Another fun detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design would only last 5 more years after 1994. In 2009, the reverse design was changed to commemorate Lincoln's life, and in 2010, it was replaced with the Union Shield design that we see today. That means the 1994 penny represents the final decade of the iconic Lincoln Memorial reverse that defined American pennies for half a century. Also, because 1994 pennies are zinc-based, many have suffered from corrosion over time, especially if exposed to moisture. Zinc scents can bubble, blister, or discolor, making truly high-grade examples harder to find today than you might expect. That's one reason collectors pay premiums for clean, uncirculated specimens. Collectors love the 1994 no mint mark penny not because it's rare in numbers, but because it represents opportunity. It's a coin that proves you don't always need something ancient or made of gold to find value. Sometimes the most interesting discoveries come from ordinary objects hiding in plain sight. This penny also appeals to beginner collectors. It's affordable, easy to find, and offers a great way to learn about mint marks, errors, grading, and the importance of condition. Many collectors got their start by searching through modern pennies just like this one, hoping to find something special. For experienced collectors, the thrill comes from hunting rare errors and pristine examples among billions of ordinary coins. The 1994 no mint mark penny reminds us that even modern coins can hold surprises, and that the story of American money is still being written every day. So the next time you see a penny dated 1994, don't just toss it aside. Take a closer look, check for doubling, look at the color, examine the strike. Because somewhere out there, among billions of ordinary cents, a few rare ones are waiting to be discovered. And who knows, that quiet little coin sitting in your pocket, your change jar, or an old drawer might be worth far more than you ever imagined. If you enjoyed uncovering the hidden story behind the 1994 no mint mark Lincoln penny, stay curious. Because the next rare coin discovery might not be in a museum or a vault or a collection. It might already be in your hands. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second glance. But what if I told you that a small copper-colored coin from 1995 with a tiny letter under Lincoln's date could be worth far more than 1 cent, and that some people have already discovered hidden treasures in their pocket change? Today, we're diving into the story of the 1995 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny. It's one of the most overlooked modern US coins, yet certain versions have quietly become collector favorites. Whether you've been saving pennies for years or just found one in a drawer, this coin may surprise you. The 1995 D Lincoln penny is a 1 cent coin produced by the United States Mint at the Denver Mint. The D Mint mark beneath the date tells us exactly where it was struck. At first glance, it looks just like millions of other Lincoln cents, but behind its ordinary appearance is a fascinating story of American history, changing metal, hidden varieties, and collector demand that continues to grow. To understand this coin, we need to go back to 1995. America was in the middle of the digital revolution. The internet was becoming mainstream, personal computers were entering homes, and the economy was growing steadily. At the same time, the US Mint was producing billions of coins to meet the needs of everyday commerce. The Lincoln cent had already been around for more than 85 years by 1995. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, making it the first circulating US coin to feature a real person. By the 1990s, the Lincoln penny had become one of the most recognizable coins in American history. The Denver Mint struck over 1.4 billion Lincoln pennies in 1995 alone. That's more than a billion coins, which explains why so many people still find them in circulation today. But here's where it gets interesting. Even when millions of coins are made, certain variations, conditions, and errors can turn ordinary coins into collector treasures. Let's take a closer look at what makes the 1995 D penny unique. On the front, or obverse, you'll see Abraham Lincoln's profile facing right. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has been used on the penny since 1909. Above Lincoln's head is the phrase, "In God we trust." In front of his face is the word liberty, and beneath him is the date, 1995, with the small letter D just below it. On the back, or reverse, the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to honor the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. Inside the memorial, if you look very closely, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln between the columns, one of the smallest engraved figures on any US coin. The 1995 D penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin copper coating. Before 1982, pennies were mostly copper, but rising metal costs forced the mint to change the composition. By 1995, pennies contained about 97.5% zinc and just 2.5% copper, giving them their familiar color while keeping production costs lower. The coin weighs 2.5 grams and measures about 19 millimeters in diameter. To most people, that's just trivia, but to collectors, these details matter, especially when identifying errors or unusual varieties. Now here's where the 1995 D penny becomes truly interesting. While most of these coins are worth just 1 cent in circulated condition, certain examples stand out, especially those in extremely high grade or those with rare minting errors. And one particular variety, connected to 1995 Lincoln cents, has become famous among collectors, even though it technically involves the Philadelphia Mint rather than Denver. That variety is the 1995 double die obverse, one of the most well-known modern penny errors. While that version does not carry a D Mint mark, its fame sparked renewed attention to all 1995 pennies, including the Denver issues. Collectors began examining their 1995 pennies more closely, and that led to discoveries of Denver-minted coins with unusual features, including off-center strikes, broad strikes, die cracks, and other minting mistakes that can dramatically increase a coin's value. Mint errors happen when something goes wrong during the coin-making process. A misaligned die, a damaged die, or a planchet that wasn't positioned correctly can create coins that look different from standard issues. Most of these errors are caught and destroyed, but some escape into circulation, and those are the ones collectors chase. For example, a 1995 D penny struck off-center by 10 to 15% can sell for $20 to $50 depending on condition. More dramatic off-center strikes can sell for over $100. Broad strikes, where the coin spreads out beyond its normal size due to a missing collar, can also command premiums. Then there are die cracks and cud errors, where chunks of the die break off, leaving raised blobs or cracks on the coin's surface. Some collectors love these dramatic imperfections, and prices can range from a few dollars to several $100s for visually striking examples. But even without errors, condition alone can turn a common penny into something valuable. Most 1995 D pennies have been heavily circulated. They've passed through countless hands, vending machines, cash registers, and pockets. This leaves them scratched, dull, and worn. But coins that were saved straight from mint rolls or sets can survive in pristine condition. Professional coin grading services use a scale from 1 to 70 to grade coins, with 70 being perfect. A 1995 D penny graded M-65 or M-66 might only be worth a few dollars. But in M-67 or higher, prices can jump dramatically. In recent years, high-grade examples of the 1995 D penny have sold at auction for $100 to $300, and in some cases even more. Coins graded M-68 red, meaning they retain full original copper color without spotting, are extremely rare and highly sought after. For instance, a certified 1995 D Lincoln cent graded M-68 red has sold for several $100s in major coin auctions. That's a huge leap from 1 cent, and it shows how much collectors value condition and rarity, even in modern coins. Now let's talk about how to identify a real 1995 D penny and make sure it hasn't been altered or faked. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1995. Beneath the date, you should see a small D mint mark. It should look clean, sharp, and naturally struck into the coin, not scratched or glued on. Added mint marks are a common trick used by dishonest sellers trying to make coins appear rarer than they really are. Next, weigh the coin if you can. A standard 1995 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it's significantly heavier or lighter, it could be damaged, plated, or altered. Look closely at the color. Genuine 1995 pennies should have a copper tone, ranging from bright red on uncirculated coins to brown on worn ones. If the coin looks silvery or gold-colored, it may have been plated outside the mint, which usually does not add collector value. Also inspect the details. Lincoln's portrait should be sharp, and the lettering should be clear. Blurry or mushy details could indicate most people would never guess that a penny from the year 2000 could be hiding in their pocket change right now, and yet, some of these ordinary-looking coins have sold for hundreds, even thousands of dollars. And the shocking part, millions of people have owned one without ever realizing what they had. Today, we're uncovering the real story behind the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a modern coin with a surprising history, hidden details, and collector demand that keeps growing every year. At first glance, this penny looks completely normal. It shows Abraham Lincoln's familiar profile on the front, just like most pennies made since 1909. On the back, instead of the Lincoln Memorial or Shield design seen today, it features the traditional wheat ears. No, actually, the year 2000 still used the Lincoln Memorial reverse, the same design that had been on U.S. pennies since 1959. Nothing about this coin screams rare or valuable. But sometimes, the most ordinary-looking coins turn out to have the most interesting stories. The 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln cent was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. Coins made in Philadelphia usually don't carry a mint mark, which is why you'll see no letter beneath the date. In the year 2000, the U.S. Mint produced more than 5.5 billion pennies in Philadelphia alone. That's billions with a B, so why would anyone care about one specific penny from such a massive production year? Because not all 2,000 pennies are created equal. To understand why this coin exists in the first place, we have to step back to the late 1990s. The U.S. economy was booming, electronic payments were growing, but cash was still king. The mint needed enormous quantities of coins to keep commerce moving smoothly. Pennies were especially important because they were used for exact change, vending machines, parking meters, and everyday purchases. In the year 2000, America was entering a new millennium, and coin production surged. The mint worked around the clock to meet demand. That rush created perfect conditions for mistakes, variations, and unusual strikes, and that's where collectors start paying attention. The 2000 Lincoln cent is made primarily of zinc, with a thin outer coating of copper. That change in composition began in 1982, when copper prices rose too high for solid copper pennies to remain economical. So unlike older pennies that were mostly copper, this one is about 97.5% zinc, coated with copper to preserve the classic look. It weighs about 2.5 grams, measures 19 millimeters across, and carries the familiar bust of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, are subtly placed on the front near Lincoln's shoulder, a small detail that many people never notice. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial design shows the iconic Washington, D.C. monument, and if you look closely inside the building, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln between the columns. That level of detail has fascinated collectors for decades. But what makes certain 2000 no-mint mark pennies special isn't the design. It's what went wrong during the minting process. Some of the most valuable examples come from mint eras. One of the most famous varieties from this year is the 2000 wide AM penny. On most Lincoln Memorial pennies, the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse are very close together, nearly touching. But on some coins, those letters are noticeably spaced apart. This happens when the mint accidentally uses a proof-style die on regular business strike coins. The wide AM variety wasn't supposed to be used for circulation strikes, yet a small number slipped into everyday coins. And because people rarely inspect pennies closely, many of these went unnoticed for years. Another valuable error is the off-center strike, where the design is shifted partially off the coin. Some 2000 pennies show dramatic off-center strikes that leave blank areas on one side. These errors are highly collectible because no two are exactly alike. Then there are double dies, where parts of the design appear doubled, especially in the date, letters, or Lincoln's profile. These occur when the die receives multiple impressions that are slightly misaligned. On some 2000 pennies, collectors have found doubling in the words Liberty or In God We Trust, making them stand out to trained eyes. There are also clipped planchets, where part of the metal blank was improperly cut before striking, leaving a curved missing section along the edge. While these errors can occur in many years, 2000 examples are particularly interesting because of the massive production numbers and wide distribution. Now let's talk about value, because this is where curiosity turns into excitement. In average circulated condition, a standard 2000 no-mint mark penny is worth exactly 1 cent. You could spend it at the store tomorrow and no one would know the difference. But in uncirculated condition, especially those graded by professional services, values rise quickly. A 2000 penny graded MS67 red, meaning nearly flawless with full original copper color, can sell for $50 to $150. In MS68, prices can jump to several $100s or more, depending on demand. The real attention, though, goes to error coins. A genuine 2000 wide AM penny has sold at auction for anywhere from $100 to over $500, depending on condition. Some pristine examples have crossed the $1,000 mark when competition between collectors is strong. Off-center strikes from this year have sold for $50 to $300, depending on how dramatic the misalignment is and whether the date remains visible. Double die varieties, especially well-defined ones, have fetched between $75 and $400, and sometimes more for high-grade pieces. And clipped planchets from 2000 have sold for $40 to $200, depending on size, shape, and condition. None of these prices are guaranteed, of course. Coin values fluctuate with demand, market trends, and collector interest. But what's fascinating is that all of these valuable coins started as ordinary pocket change, which means someone somewhere spent a coin that was worth far more than 1 cent and never knew it. So how can you tell if your 2000 penny is special? First, look beneath the date. If there's no letter, it's from Philadelphia. That alone doesn't make it valuable, but it's the starting point. Next, flip the coin over and inspect the word America. Look closely at the spacing between the A and M. If they appear clearly separated instead of nearly touching, you may have a wide AM variety. This is one of the easiest ways to spot a potentially valuable example without special tools. Then, examine the lettering on the front. Look at Liberty and In God We Trust. If the letters appear doubled or shadowed, especially when viewed with a magnifying glass, you could be holding a double die. Check the edges of the coin as well. If part of the metal appears missing in a smooth curve, it may be a clipped planchet. Finally, look at the alignment of the design. If Lincoln's portrait or the reverse image is noticeably off-center, that could indicate an error strike. Be cautious though. Scratches, damage, or post-mint alterations can sometimes look like errors. A genuine mint error usually has smooth, natural-looking metal surfaces, not jagged edges or tool marks. If you think you've found something unusual, it's always smart to compare it with verified images online or consult a professional coin dealer or grading service. Now let's explore a few surprising facts about the 2000 penny that most people don't know. First, it was one of the last pennies to feature the Lincoln Memorial design before the massive changes that came in 2009 for Lincoln's 200th birthday and the bicentennial of his birth. That makes it part of the final chapter of a design era that lasted half a century. Second, because of the huge mintage, millions of people around the world still own 2000 pennies today, often sitting forgotten in jars, drawers, piggy banks, or inherited coin collections. Third, even though it's a modern coin, the best condition examples are surprisingly rare. Most pennies from this year entered circulation immediately and suffered wear. Finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition today is much harder than people expect. Fourth, some collectors specialize exclusively in modern-era coins, and the 2000 penny is considered one of the most exciting years because of the wide AM variety and other striking mistakes. And finally, this coin reminds us that valuable collectibles don't always come from ancient history or distant eras. Sometimes they come from everyday life, the change in your pocket, the coins in your car console, or the jar on your dresser. So why do collectors love the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny? Because it represents discovery. Unlike famous rare coins that are already locked away in museums or elite collections, this coin still exists out in the wild. Anyone can find one. You don't need wealth, connections, or a private dealer. You just need curiosity and attention to detail. Collectors love the thrill of searching through rolls of pennies from the bank, hoping to spot that wide AM spacing, a doubled letter, or an off-center strike. It turns an everyday object into a treasure hunt. There's also something powerful about holding a coin that connects you to a specific moment in time, the turn of the millennium. The year 2000 marked global celebrations, technological change, and the start of a new chapter in human history. And this small copper-colored coin was quietly traveling through millions of hands during that historic year. It's not just money, It's a time capsule. And while most 2,000 pennies will always be worth just 1 cent, a small number continue to surprise collectors with their value, uniqueness, and stories. So the next time you get change at the store or open a drawer and find a forgotten coin jar, don't rush past the pennies. Take a closer look, turn them over, examine the details. Because somewhere out there, a rare 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may still be waiting to be discovered, and it might already be closer than you think. Sometimes history doesn't shout. Sometimes it whispers from the smallest places. And in the world of coin collecting, even a single penny can hold a story worth far more than 1 cent.